take a billion. Yeah. What's good, YouTube? It's your boy, Gold Maze. That's GLD Maze, all caps when you spell the damn name. And today I want to talk about attitude, and really my attitude going forward with my art, and the attitude I've had thus far, and how necessarily that attitude hasn't served me. And I want to talk about the change that has been occurring the past like month and a half or the past 2 months, however long since my last video, and kind of talk about the changes that I've been going through mentally to even think about continuing this channel, to think about continuing my blog, and to think about keeping forward with my rap career, and however that's going. You know what I mean? Like, I want to be able to be honest with you guys about where I'm at with this shit and think about my process strategically and think about it with you guys. Bring you guys along for the journey. So, yeah. My attitude thus far, it's been really just that I need to show up at a certain point and just do the art, do the writing, do the reading, do whatever I need to do. But the conditions have to be just right, you know? I have to be in this weird Goldilocks zone in order for me to do anything. That's what the attitude has been so far. And the problem with that is that it really messes up my feng shui. It messes up my creative flow of momentum. You know what I mean? Like, I could be working on a project, and for some reason, the conditions for that project have been perfect. I'm going through it smoothly, getting a lot done, being productive, and then all of a sudden, there's something that happens. There's something that occurs in life. Life just happens. And all of a sudden, I get in my head about my execution of everything. And it like derails me, and I get into a whole depressive episode. And sometimes I get out of it fast, sometimes I don't. And really, it messes up the whole operation, I feel like. because like, wanting the conditions to be just right is necessarily like a safety net. I can't always operate with a safety net in this creative field, especially in hip hop. I kind of have to feed myself to the sharks at a certain point. I have to enter the fray. I have to sharpen my teeth. I have to really sharpen my blade against other steel. You know what I mean? I have to collide with others. I have to really compete. I have to do all these things. And that fear, it stems from a fear that I'm defined by my weakness. You know, that's why I get immobile when I think about these things, and I think about what I need to do next. And that fear that I'm defined by my mistakes, that I'm going to be defined by my mistakes, is very real, but it's almost irrational. You know, and I can tell you why it's irrational, because of something called the audience effect. And this is for all artists. It applies to everything, not just hip hop, um, but all influencers or anything. Anyone who creates. Something happens when the lights go on and the audience is locked into a program or show or movie or whatever piece of media. Their disbelief molds itself to whatever they're watching. Immediately, they're tranced by the promise and payoff provided by whoever runs the show. It's completely in the maker's show how the show. It's completely in the maker's control how the show goes. And realize this dynamic exists on YouTube as well. Everybody on YouTube is literally just a floating head. There's tons of shit the audience is not thinking about, is not privy to, that we have to contend with as a creator. And it's just not in their periphery, even face to face with one of my videos. They're not thinking about, what goes into what kind of insecurities are going into me trying to talk to myself in front of a camera. You know what I mean? And that's not their job to understand. And it's not my job to project onto them. It's my job to just provide what I can provide. And knowing this, that it is completely in my control what the audience sees of me, It opens the endeavor up to a whole new mindset with this art shit. You know what I mean? Like, as an artist in the digital landscape, you have to create an ecosystem for your process and output. Everything doesn't exist in a vacuum anymore. You don't just do some, like, it's so easy to get noticed. It's so easy for your world to pop, for your bubble to pop, and for people to interact with your shit on a more personal level, on a more visceral level. You know, output doesn't exist in a vacuum, even for small local artists. You know, you have to world build, you have to movie make, you have to set up the cards for your game. You know, and because these platforms represent blank canvases, and you have the freedom to necessarily structure your platform however you want. Because of the digital landscape, you can literally mold it to be whatever you need it to be. Whatever metaphor you need for how you function, whatever poetry you need for your emotion, get into that shit. Cause a commotion. You feel me? Know your potions. You feel me? Get smooth like lotion. I don't know what I'm trying to do. But yeah, understanding that, understanding the potential that really lies in this endeavor in world building rather than just creating art and seeing what sticks. Like, really trying to break down where I exist at in this endeavor. My fear about making mistakes is ridiculous, since I'm going to be putting my best foot forward regardless. No one is expecting me to mess up. You feel me? They're coming to me from a perspective of, I don't know this cat. You know what I mean? Like, they want to know me, and I'm showing them piece by piece who I am. I'm showing them piece by piece what I think and how I operate. Necessarily, that puzzle is supposed to be a grander scheme operation. It's supposed to have a larger narrative, a larger message. You know, what is your message? What is your intention? That is supposed to be the running current underneath all that you do. And but yeah, no one's expecting me to mess up. You know what I'm saying? No one is micromanaging and micro analyzing everything that I'm saying and doing and coming up with anything, coming with some narrative about the situation. You know what I mean? Like, that's not happening. I'm not small. I'm not big enough for that shit. You feel me? I'm not known enough for that shit. You feel me? I'm a floating head in the digital sea, bro. And I get to control what people see in my domain. You feel me? Uh, but with that freedom, and my new mindset seeks to answer certain questions. You know, what is the structure of my digital domain? You know, now that I've said that world building means molding your platform your to your whims, to your service, what is the structure that I am going to take on in my digital domain, in my digital footprint? And my answer is my digital domain is an institute. That's how I think of myself. I think of myself as someone who has a particular practice that I want to share that practice, and I want to share the process of doing the practice, and hopefully encourage other people to enrich their lives through that same practice. You know what I mean? Like, people come across my page, my blog, my YouTube, my Spotify when they're looking for something new, to discover and cultivate. They're looking to interact with interesting ideas, futuristic visions, and spiritual considerations. You feel me? All of that shit, all of my art necessarily fits under that bubble. And I don't mean to say that I'm teaching people on my YouTube or anything, but I'm participating in a particular practice, and I want to encourage this type of practice to more people looking to enrich their lives with art. And I want to encourage community and conversation towards topics conducive to a productive, thinking, and creative individual. I want to produce clever thinkers. I want to produce smart people. I want to change people. I want to change people to look at the world through different lenses and be and be a curious thinker, be a curious mind. Always ask questions. Always question your authority. Always question, um, you know, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like, um, whenever I say something that seems very serious, uh, I get in my head about how serious am I really taking that, and and that's necessarily because I haven't really staked a claim on anything. Like I don't really own anything. You feel me? Like I own, like, you know what? I can't explain it. I can't explain what I'm trying to what I'm trying to convey here. It's like this is the only thing that I have. This art and this domain that I'm trying to create online. Um, it's all I got, you know. And me taking it seriously, I hope isn't lost on the people who watch this video. You know, I want to be I want my digital domain to be an institute because I want to encourage a certain conversation, a certain type of thinking, a certain type of thinker, and I want to necessarily have my YouTube be a department of this institute. And the department necessarily is like a character study department for my own artistic exploration. Like I'm studying my persona and its expressions, idiosyncrasies, and development of personality and philosophy. And I'm watching that growth, hopefully episodically. But then it's also a petri dish for all my raw data. All the ideas, plans, strategies, rants, rambles, speeches. It serves as a stage for my raw data to interact with the audience and hopefully each other. Hopefully coming to new revelations or at least entertaining with the stream of consciousness vibe. You know, at the end of the day, I want to make people feel like they're not alone in these thoughts that they have as creatives. I want to give them a voice. I want to give them um, a place where they can feel heard. You know, that's what the YouTube is for. And I have a blog. The blog is THE.MAZIST, and it's on Substack. And that really operates as the press of the Mazist Institute. And that's really what I am. I am a Mazist. I am a Mazism. I subscribe to Mazism. That's It's kind of on the nose, but that is where I'm at right now. you know, uh, the blog is the press. And so I publish the poetry, the essays, the experiments of writing in my brand of philosophy and prose. Um, and I try to, attract readers, thinkers, world explorers, lore devourers, people who really want to explore the deeper side of what I do. People who want to explore the deeper side of artistry in general. Um, Not to say that my art is deeper than most. It's really not. All I'm trying to say is that it serves as a narrative extension to my music and to the way I present myself, even on here. You know, it's a place where people can dive deeper into my art from a lore perspective, from a literary perspective, and from a poetic perspective. You know, it's a place for them to really explore the meat of how I think, the meat of how the Mazist believes and how he operates. You know, and I also want to post music videos on YouTube and my blog because those aren't necessarily meant to be like cinematic character explorations. They're like scenes from the play or film my music soundtracks. You know what I mean? And that's kind of the attitude I'm having with this blog. It's the press. It is I giving you my ideas in their most raw, wordy format. It's for those who really want to interact with my thinking at that level, who really want to delve deep into that thought process, into that philosophy, into those characters, into those dialogues. If you want to do all that shit with me, come to the blog. But if you want to stick with the conversation, if you want to sticking with me face to face, and you want to see me be visceral and be raw in how I think and how I talk, be on the YouTube, you know. But it's really a place for us to learn, for us to explore together. And I don't really know if I'm gonna post consistently on TikTok or post at all on TikTok. I'm gonna be real with you. You know, I'm still learning how to best present myself on long format videos, and I feel like I just don't need the pressure of TikTok, how they just condense that whole ordeal into like a few seconds. You know what I mean? They literally make that decision whether or not they want to watch a video or not in less than a second. They just swipe down, you know, and I feel like that's really demeaning to a lot of people's creativity. So, and I don't want to be demeaned, you know. At the very end of the day, I would like to give myself the best chance for my ideas to be heard and for my ideas to be understood. And so, that's my focus. The main focus is cultivating these long discussion type videos and maintaining consistency with my written work. And hopefully YouTube will close some gaps between people who read my blog and people who listen to my music, and realize the nigga making both is like a dope nigga. You know, he's a dope nigga too. You know what I'm saying? You feel me? Type shit. And then my Spotify and my SoundCloud, you know, my music. It's a canvas for the radio of the Mazist lifestyle to be cultivated. You know, it's every album is necessarily a movie or a film that's like a fusion of a bunch of genres that work as a playground for a bunch of Mazist ideas. And I'll get into what Mazism is next. And Mazism is basically like my practice of art, and it's a deep connection to magic and nature, and I mean nature from the difference between nature versus nurture. You know, I'm sticking to my guns. I'm sticking to what my natural inclinations are, and I'm trying to develop them from a certain perspective. And then magic from a perspective of symbolic power, and from a perspective of the ability to change people and the ability to change yourself through your art, and to represent yourself as one with your art. And it's a methodology focused on like spiritual development through running narrative artistic simulations with experimental programs. And the programs are like ideas of character, ethics, philosophy, style, even, all meant to envision new types of thinking for the modern age. You know, it's a process to creation connected to symbolic power generation. You know, creating experimental symbols, these characters and their different attributes, histories, and futures, for the sole purpose of charging them with conflict, emotional resonance, and aesthetic in general, to see the wisdom they discover in the simulation's procession, and to necessarily change the minds of people, to change the world at large. You know, I try to think of my magic, my art, as a code that is decoding and forming as, you know, and learning itself almost, as I create it. And so to be a mazist is to be a modern wizard or a modern technomancer. Excuse me. A modern alchemist, you know? Um, we work with the ether of ideas and images and sounds and words, and, we're a mad scientist. We make fusions. We make mad concoctions, mad contraptions. Excuse me. And necessarily, my artistry is my institute. It is the playground where these ideas build their structures, break down their structures, fuse together, make new life, make new ideas, make new concepts, and make new storylines and arcs for people to learn from, for people to entertain themselves with, and everything like that, you know? And that's really the general idea about mazism, about mazists. We take the maze, the complicated puzzle that is our various inspirations and our various influences and stories and memories and all that shit, and we create a lattice, we create a matrix of them playing along each other, playing with each other, and environments, characters, philosophies, styles, ways of talking, word choice. All that shit is necessarily creating another maze for us to solve. That's getting us to the core of ourselves, you know? And that's necessarily what I represent. That's necessarily what I practice. So everything that I do, the YouTube, the blog, my music, and my books, you know, at some point, you know, I want to be able to really showcase these ideas in their fullest extent, and at some point connect them all through lore, um, through expanded novels, through comic books, you know, through songs and albums and music videos that explore character, you know, visuals and shit. You know what I mean? I just have vision, man, and I really don't. And I really don't want to lose that vision because I am afraid of coming across as corny or coming across as doing too much. You know, I don't want to worry about that shit, bro. I want to do what I do. You feel me? At a certain point, you know, fuck it. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, that's really what I'm going for. That's the attitude I'm trying to have. I'm trying to go for it and necessarily think about it systematically and think about it metaphorically and use that metaphor as my guiding star. If I am an institute, that means I only talk about certain things. I only talk a certain way. I only explore thoughts in a certain manner, and I have a certain ethic about how I go about doing that. And so I need to focus on how that looks, you know, what that looks like for me. I need to, you know, develop that for myself and continue to experiment. You know, that's this whole endeavor. It's just experimentation, you know, seeing what works, what sticks. But really trying to go at it from a perspective of strategy. I think I haven't been strategically thinking in such a long time, and I want to get back to doing that. Planning out shit. Not sometimes when I hear planning out, I get in my head. I'm like, nah, that's corny, bro. Nah, you don't want to fucking plan out shit. You don't want to plan out shit. You want to be authentic. You want to be you. You want to be wild and free. But, you know, obviously, you know, that can only get you so far. You need to be intentional with what you're doing. So I'm taking it as I go, and I'm learning to do something new. So cut me some slack, okay? Damn. For real though, I feel like I'm really moving forward now. I feel like I'm really moving forward now. So, yeah. I don't know how to end these videos, man. I need to work on that. That's another thing I want to work on is ending videos well, because I'm really rambling right now. But yeah, my artistry is my institute. The Mazist Institute begins, and you are along for the journey. So check out my music, check out my blog. Both are in the description down below. And happy reading, happy listening. Peace.